Hey everybody, welcome to Adventure Go 2. Just went for a little hike this morning. Man, it's never dry out here. It's insane. I tell you, we're supposed to hit 41 degrees today. Yeah, I'm gonna avoid the backcountry like the plague from now on. I do a lot of videoing on the side-by-side. We actually got a fire. It's back there, probably about 30 kilometers. So it said on the fire center there that it was out of control too. Yeah, I do a lot of fishing in that area, and there was already a raging fire that went through there a few years back. Really desecrated all the trees and all that. On a better note, I took a little video here of my trip from Colorado and snipped out the Mesa Verde, put some new narrative to it. You're probably asking, well, why'd you do that? Well, it's just a lot of my videos are pretty long. You know, my last bike trip there was over 2 hours long. To tell you the truth, it better be pretty damn exciting to sit through 2.5 hours. So I decided to make it a little bit shorter and just put in the Mesa Verde part. And I hope you enjoy it. I know I did. I'm kind of a history buff, so I kind of like reading about the wars and, you know, the First Peoples and areas like that. If you're not familiar with Mesa Verde, it's down in the southwest corner of Colorado, and there's a little place there called Four Corners. Don't ask me what all the states are. Anyways, sit back and enjoy the next 17 minutes of your life. Grab a beer, enjoy this hot weather, and as I always say before, get out there and explore. Welcome to Mesa Verde National Park. Mesa Verde National Park is an American national park and UNESCO World Heritage Site located in Montezuma County, Colorado, and the only World Heritage Site in Colorado. The park protects some of the best preserved ancestral Puebloan ancestral sites in the United States. Established by Congress and President Theodore Roosevelt in 1906, the park occupies 52,485 acres, or 212 square kilometers, near the Four Corners region of the American Southwest. With more than 5,000 sites, including 600 cliff dwellings, it is the largest archaeological preserve in the United States. Mesa Verde, Spanish for Green Table, or more specifically Green Table Mountain, is best known for structures such as Cliff Palace, one of the largest cliff dwellings in North America. Starting at 7500 BC, Mesa Verde was seasonally inhabited by a group of nomadic Paleo-Indians known as the Foothills Mountain Complex. The variety of projectile points found in the region indicates they were influenced by surrounding areas, including the Great Basin, the San Juan Basin, and the Rio Grande Valley. Later, archaic people established semi-permanent rock shelters in and around Mesa. By 1000 BC, the basket maker culture emerged from the local archaic population, and by 750 AD, the ancestral Puebloans had developed from the basket maker culture. The Pueblo people survived using a combination of hunting, gathering, and subsistence farming of crops such as corn, beans, and squash. They built the Mesa's first pueblos sometime after 650. And by the end of the 12th century, they began to construct the massive cliff dwellings for which the park is best known. By 1285, following a period of social and environmentally instability driven by a series of severe and prolonged droughts, they migrated south to locations in Arizona and New Mexico, including the Rio Chama, the Albuquerque Basin, and Pararito Plateau, and the foot of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. The Mesa Verde region has long been occupied by the Utes, and an 1868 treaty between them and the United States government recognized Ute ownership of all Colorado land west of the Continental Divide. After there had become an interest in the land in western Colorado, a new treaty in 1873 left the Ute with a strip of land in southwest Colorado between the border with New Mexico and 15 miles north. Most of Mesa Verde lies within this strip of land. The Ute wintered, found sanctuary there and the high plateaus of Mesa Verde. Believing the cliff dwellings to be sacred ancestral sites, they did not live in the ancient dwellings. The first occupants of the Mesa Verde region, which spans from southeastern Utah to northwestern New Mexico, were nomadic Paleo-Indians who arrived in the area at 9500 BC. They followed herds of big game and camped near rivers and streams, many of which dried up as the glaciers that once covered parts of the San Juan Mountains receded. The earliest Paleo-Indians were the Clovis culture and Folsom tradition, defined largely by how they fashioned projectile points. Although they left evidence of their presence throughout the region, there is little indication that they lived in central Mesa Verde during this time. After 9600 BC, the area's environment grew warmer and drier, a change that brought to central Mesa Verde pine forests and the animals that thrive in them. Paleo-Indians began inhabiting the mesa in increasing numbers around 7500 BC, though it is unclear whether they were seasoned occupants or year-round residents. Development of the spear thrower during this period made it easier for them to hunt smaller game, a crucial advance at a time when most of the region's big game had disappeared from the landscape. The first pueblos appeared at Mesa Verde sometime after 650. By 850, more than half of the Pueblo people lived in them. As local populations grew, Puebloans found it difficult to survive on hunting, foraging, and gardening, which made them increasingly reliant on domesticated corn. The shift from semi-nomadism to sedentary and communal way of life changed ancestral Pueblo society forever. With generation, the average number of households in these settlements grew from 1 to 3 to 15 to 20, with average populations of 200 people. Population density decreased dramatically, with as much as a dozen families occupying roughly the same space that had formerly housed two. This brought increased security against raids and encouraged greater cooperation amongst residents. It also facilitated trade and intermarriage between clans, and by the late 8th century, as Mesa Verde's population was being augmented by settlers from the south, 4 distinct cultural groups occupied the same villages. A severe drought from 1130 to 1180 led to rapid depopulation in many parts of the San Juan Basin, particularly at Chaco Canyon. As the extensive Chacoan system collapsed, people increasingly migrated to Mesa Verde, causing major population growth in the area. This led to much larger settlements of 600 to 800 people, which reduced mobility for Puebloan who had in the past frequently relocated their dwellings and fields as part of their agricultural strategy. In order to sustain these larger populations, they dedicated more and more of their labor to farming. Population increases also led to expanded tree felling that reduced habitat for many wild plant and animal species that the Puebloan had relied on. further deepening their dependency on domesticated crops that were susceptible to drought-related failure. A recent study has shown that residents resorted to cannibalism starting in 1150 due to the discovery of disarticulated human remains that were prepared and consumed. The 13th century saw 69 years of below-average rainfall in the Mesa Verde region, and after 1270, the area suffered from especially cold temperatures. The last tree felled for construction on the Mesa was cut in 1281. There was major decline in ceramic imports to the region during this time, but local production remained steady. Despite challenging conditions, the Puebloans continued to farm the area until a severely dry period from 1276 to 1299 ended 700 years of continuous human occupation at Mesa Verde. Archaeologists refer to this period as the Great Drought. The last inhabitants of the Mesa left the area around 1285. The vacating ancestral Pueblo people left almost no direct evidence of their migration, but they left behind household goods, including cooking utensils, tools, and clothing, which gave archaeologists the impression that the immigration was haphazard or hurried. An estimated 20,000 people lived in the region during the 13th century, but by the start of the 14th century, the area was nearly uninhabited. Many surviving immigrants may have relocated to southern Arizona and New Mexico. Although the rate of settlement is unclear, increases in sparsely populated areas such as Rio Chama, Pajarito Plateau, and Santa Fe correspond directly with the period of migration from Mesa Verde. Archaeologists believe the Puebloans who settled in the areas near the Rio Grande, where Mesa Verde black-on-white pottery became widespread during the 14th century, were likely related to the households they joined and not unwelcome intruders. In 1889, Goodman Point Pueblo became the first pre-Columbian archaeological site in the Mesa Verde region to gain federal protection. It was the first such site to be protected in the U.S. Virginia McClurg was diligent in her efforts between 1887 and 1906 to inform the United States and European community of the importance of protecting the important historical material and dwellings in Mesa Verde. By the end of the 19th century, it was clear that Mesa Verde needed protection from people in general who came to Mesa Verde and created or sold their own collection of artifacts. Parties of curio seekers camped on the ruin for several winters, and it is reported that many hundred specimens there have been carried down the mesa and sold to private individuals. Some of these objects are now museums, but many are forever lost to science. In order to secure this valuable archaeological material, walls were broken down, often simply to let light into the darker rooms. Floors were invariably opened and buried kivas mutilated. To facilitate this work and get rid of the dust, great openings were broken through the 5 walls which formed the front of the ruin. Beams were used for firewood to so great an extent that not a single roof now remains. This work of destruction added to that resulting from erosion due to the rain, and it left Cliff Palace in a sad condition. In 1976, 8,500 acres was designated as a wilderness area. These 3 small and separate sections of the national park are located on the steep north and east boundaries and serve as buffers to further protect the significant Native American sites. Unlike most wilderness areas, visitors' access to Mesa Verde Wilderness is prohibited, along with the rest of the park's backcountry. Access to park facilities vary by season. 3 of the cliff dwellings on Chapin Mesa are open to the public. The Chapin Mesa Museum is open all year, Spruce Tree House is closed due to rockfall danger. Balcony House, Longhouse, and Cliff Palace require tour tickets for ranger-guided tours. Many other dwellings are visible from the road but not open to tourists. The park offers hiking trails, a campground, and during peak season, facilities for food, fuel, and lodging. These are unavailable in the winter. For more information and historical data, please visit the National Park Service at nps.gov/meve/index.htm.